The ruling Prosperity Party wins a landslide election victory in Ethiopia. This is Addis News Hour, and many thanks for joining us with the news. I'm Shifarao Lako. Do stay with us. The ruling Prosperity Party has won the most seats in the country's parliamentary election. That's according to official results, a victory that assures Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed a second 5-year term in office. The National Election Board of Ethiopia announced on Saturday night that the ruling party won 410 seats out of 436 in the federal parliament, which will see some seats remain vacant because no vote was held as a result of unrest or logistical reasons. Two opposition parties, the Ethiopian Social Justice for Democracy and the National Movement of Amhara, have won just 11 seats, 6 and 5 respectively. 4 other independent candidates have also taken seats in the parliament. Now, the chair of the National Election Board of Ethiopia, Birtukan Mideksa, hails the 6th general elections the country held. She praises the electorate for demonstrating an incredible gesture that disproves all doubts surrounding the election. According to official results Saturday, the chairperson said her team has been working their best to make the institution independent. Demis Makro has more on that.
Ethiopia conducted a peaceful general election amidst fragile peace, defying the orders that had surrounded the election. Many were heard voicing concern over potential violence and insurrection that the election could yield. Things, however, went the other way around, and the country managed to hold one of the peaceful elections in the continent. Announcing official results on Saturday, Board Chair Birtukan Mideksa attributed the success to all actors and extended special thanks to her team for diligently working to make the board independent.
የተቋሙ ገለልተኝነት የሚታይ ሆኗል። ግን ይሄ በጣም በቀላል ነገር የመጣ አይደለም።
We have proved that our board is now independent. It was not a simple task to achieve that. We have been through many ups and downs. Me and my colleagues have suffered a lot, learned a lot, and finally managed to make the board independent.
በብዙ ፍጭት ውስጥ በብዙ ግጭት ውስጥ ማለፍ ማለት ነው።
She also said the election board did everything possible to make the 6th general election as democratic, participatory, and credible as possible. She mentioned the peacefulness of the voting was a clear manifestation of such efforts.
የምርጫው ዕለት ወጥተን አዲስ አበባ ላይ ያንን ሁላ መስመር ያንን ሁላ ሰልፍ ስናይ
During the voting day, I was so amazed to witness a large number of people here in Addis taking long lines and waiting for their turn to cast ballots. Voters showed an amazing patience till midnight just to cast ballots. They did so because the voting day was so peaceful. So today, on behalf of the board, I speak with confidence that we were able to transform the will of the voters to political power.
ተአማኒ የሆነ ምርጫ ለሀገራችን ዜጎች ሰጥተናል እላለሁኝ።
Birtukan asserted that the election was a potent gesture of the Ethiopian people to debunk widespread fears that the country may plunge into chaos. The chair thanked various actors for their concerted effort to make the election a success.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has congratulated Ethiopians on the certified election results announced yesterday by the National Election Board of Ethiopia. The Prosperity Party has won 410 seats in elections held in 436 constituencies out of 547 parliamentary seats. Prime Minister Abiy expressed gratitude to Ethiopians and appreciated the electoral process as Ethiopia's first attempt at a free and fair and credible vote. The Premier also thanked leaders and members of political parties involved in the election despite various challenges. He said the 6th general elections have been unique for the elections were conducted through coordination of an independent electoral board. He also expressed commitment to serving the public, diligently focusing on bringing prosperity and improving the livelihood of the people. Now, moving on, the President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed, congratulated Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for his party's landslide victory of the election. Quote, in quote, "I warmly congratulate PM Abiy Ahmed on regaining a strong mandate from the people of Ethiopia," the President said. The President further reiterated the commitment of Somalia to continue to work with the government of Ethiopia to further strengthen bilateral relations and benefit peoples of the two countries and the wider region. President Sahle-Work Zewde urged the ruling Prosperity Party, which will form a new government soon, to serve all Ethiopians equally. Speaking on the official announcement of election results Saturday, the president said all parties should work to emancipate Ethiopia from the quagmire it's in right now. Kasaun Chane has more of that.
While speaking at the event of the announcement of the results of the 6th general election, President Sahle-Work appreciated all pertinent actors involved in the election for its peaceful conduct. The President on the occasion underlined that the winner of the election, which will form a new government afterwards, should establish a government that works for all Ethiopians.
Election is one important element to build democracy, but never an end result in itself. It is the post-election task that requires special attention. The party that will form a new government winning the election is expected to serve all Ethiopians equally.
She also reminded all pertinent states to give special attention to solving chronic problems tempting the country's well-being.
Our primary task should be emancipating Ethiopia from the difficult situation it is in right now. The country has passed through many trying times. It is mandatory to lift it out of this quagmire. We are in a critical juncture to finish our mega dam. So we must buckle down. We should put our differences aside despite parties' results of the election and cooperate to build our nation.
The President also calls for national consensus by strengthening unity to build a respected country where proud people will live a dignified life.
Now moving on, UNDP representative to Ethiopia has commended the 6th general election during the official announcement of final results. The development partner to the National Election Board and the German ambassador to Ethiopia, Stefan Auer, has also appreciated the commitment of the election board and independence of the election. Jerusalem Betzia presents the story as follows.
On June 21st, Ethiopia has conducted the 6th general election in 8 regional states and the 2 city administrations. According to the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia, about 38.2 million Ethiopians registered to vote, and over 8,200 candidates from 45 political parties have participated in the 6th general election across the country. About 254,000 electoral executives have participated as an electoral executive in the election. The National Electoral Board of Ethiopia announced today the first round of election result in the presence of different political parties, election observers, and high-ranking government officials. Speaking on the occasion, Chief of Mission of IOM, Maureen Etching, and representative of the United Nations Resident Humanitarian Coordinator in Ethiopia, Catherine Sozi, said the sixth general election of Ethiopia was transparent and credible. She added the UN, through the management role of UNDP and other partners, including the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia, has contributed various technical and material support in realizing the election successful.
I would like to express the gratitude of the United Nations to NEBE for the constructive partnership throughout the past 2 years that has enabled SEED's project to provide assistance to strengthening the capacity of NEBE to implement a transparent and credible electoral process.
She reiterated the commitment of the UN to continue support to the government of Ethiopia in the efforts underway to realize a peaceful and inclusive country with resilient democracy. Meanwhile, development partner of the board and German ambassador to Ethiopia, Stefan Orr, appreciated the commitment and independence of the board.
I would like to seize this opportunity to express my appreciations for NEBE's commitment, independence, professionalism, and willingness to undertake key reforms. I would in particular like to congratulate NEBE's chairperson, Bertukan Mideksa, for a strong leadership, which was the cornerstone of this electoral process. I would like to underline the high commitment of NEBE for trying to make this process transparent by consulting regularly all stakeholders on various issues, taking time for dialogue, explanation, and clarification. Let me also highlight the positive and constructive attitude of most of the stakeholders to peacefully participate in this process.
Eastern Africa Standby Force Election Observation Mission, African Union Election Observation Mission, Coalition of Civic Society, Organizations for Election and Women Lawyers Association are among the international observers of Ethiopia's the 6th general election. Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde, leaders of contending political parties, representatives of the international community and civic society organizations, and influential public figures have attended the first round of election result announcement ceremony.
For thousands of years, the peoples of the Horn of Africa have revered the mighty Nile. Its spiritual significance to these lands has been enshrined in poetry, music, and spoken word for time immemorial. And in a land that is holy to Christians and Muslims and followers of many faiths, these waters hold a place in the hearts of millions of Africans. And in all this time, the waters have flowed with only a dream of being able to harness and help bring millions of women, children, and men out from darkness. Today, a new dawn is upon us, when a continent can rejoice in unison. The grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a beacon of hope for all Africans. The use of a hydroelectric dam which does not consume the water, but rather allows it to continue its flow to our brothers and sisters in Sudan and Egypt, will finally allow the lights to turn on in all of the African Nile Basin countries. Since the dawn of time, Ethiopia, who contributes 80% plus of the waters, has used 0%. Today, more than 60% of Ethiopians do not have access to basic electricity. Ethiopia has watched as her soil and minerals be swept away to irrigate the cotton farms of Egypt, while her mothers still carry firewood upon their backs and sit in darkness. The time for a fair and equitable share of the Nile is now. The time for all 11 African nations who feed the Nile to share in its life-giving potential is now. This is truly a dam of inclusivity, of kindness, and of shared prosperity. Light, energy, education, food security, and a chance for prosperity for millions. This is Africa's dam. This is our dam. This is my dam.
Now, Ethiopia is relentlessly urging neighboring Egypt and Sudan to consider GERD as a tool to promoting peace and cooperation in Africa, although the two did not welcome the move well. Throughout the years of the construction of the dam, Ethiopia adhered to international principles which set a major cornerstone for the equitable utilization of the waters of the Blue Nile. In this connection, Daniel Kasaun has produced the following story.
The Nile River is one of the longest transboundary rivers in the world, cruising through 11 riparian countries. Except for Sudan and Egypt, who enjoyed the colonial monopoly of the river for thousands of years. The rest of the riparian countries have never benefited from this river. Since the commencement of GERD, Ethiopia has been relentlessly urging neighboring Egypt and Sudan to consider the dam as a tool to promoting peace and cooperation in Africa. Regrettably, the negotiations on GERD were interrupted due to the sabotage from Sudan and Egypt. Contrary to the mandates of the UN Security Council, Sudan and Egypt were seeking for a resolution which demanded the condemnation and ultimate stoppage of the construction of the GERD.
It must also be clear that the underlying problem for the difference between the three countries is the quest to preserve colonial and monopolistic status quo over the Nile. The approach of trying to solve problems using the mindset that creates them is what blocks our consensus on the GERD. The Security Council is faced with the question to determine whether or not Ethiopians have the right to utilize the Nile River.
The Ethiopian Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy stated that it was wrong to take a hydroelectric issue to the UN Security Council in an attempt to depict Ethiopia's need for electrical energy as a national security issue, while it is clear that it is purely a development issue.
It is regrettable that our sisterly countries opted to bring the matter to the Security Council. I will not drag you to a discussion of issues on my usual disposition to explain technical details on dams and hydrology. However, I want us to truly appreciate the subject matter we are compelled to discuss, and we are speaking of a hydroelectric dam.
Despite the treacherous and manipulative diplomacy that Egypt pursued, almost all UN Security Council members and non-permanent members countries called for reauthorizing the AU to handle the stalemate on negotiations on GERD in line with the principles of mutual benefits, settlement of African conflicts in the African way. Egypt and Sudan should work hard to promote GERD as a vital instrument to promoting peace, cooperation and economic development, as the project aims at providing benefits not only to Ethiopia but also to other riparian countries in the region, including Egypt and Sudan.
Ethiopia is building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, on the Nile. GERD will be the 8th largest in the world. Here's why everyone needs to support GERD. First, the filling of the dam is conducted only during heavy rainfall months of July and August. So, the dam does not reduce water availability downstream. Second, GERD offers many benefits to Egypt and Sudan, including reduction in floods and evaporation losses. Third, Ethiopia is building this $5 billion dam using its own money. Fourth, GERD brings some fairness to Ethiopia. Ethiopia provides 85% of the Nile's waters, but receives nothing. Egypt contributes 0% but has received the lion's share of it. Last but not least, GERD will pull millions out of poverty. GERD will ensure that Ethiopia will meet the UN's development goal on energy. For those reasons, GERD is a project everyone needs to support.
Now, moving to other stories, the European Foreign Affairs Council will exchange views on the situation in Ethiopia after the elections held on June 21, and against the background of the worsening conflict in the Tigray region, which is already in its 8th month. Approximately 91% of the population of Tigray, about 5.2 million people, are considered to be in need of emergency assistance. There are an estimated 2 million displaced people, including about 70,000 Ethiopian refugees in Sudan. Discussions are expected to focus on the humanitarian and political situation in Tigray, but also on the regional context in relation to the GERD and heightened tensions with Sudan on the Ethio-Sudan border. Now, Ethiopia has started the process of restructuring $1 billion of an additional public debt to boost growth recovery amidst COVID-19 pandemic. The plan, however, does not include Eurobonds. It is to be recalled that the Ministry of Finance announced that the restructuring would provide 6 years grace period and expected to extend the maturity by 10 years. Talking to CGTN, the chairman of Fairfax Africa, Zamadine Negato, said the restructuring process is showing significant progress. It is what he said.
Ethiopia has been working on debt restructuring, partly with the DSSI program, but also reprofiling with the IMF, and it's been ongoing for the last couple, 3-4 months. It sounds like they're making progress, but as you indicated, the IMF is also putting in its effort to expedite the process. But for me, the key point is that they've actually made very significant progress since they started this process. As you indicated in your intro, they started with a target of $4 billion, of which $2.5 billion has already been restructured, extended, the repayment period has been extended, and the interest rates also have been renegotiated. So yes, this process started, as you said, in February, but for me, the result of what they've already achieved is actually a very good indicator that they're on track. Perhaps with the establishment of this creditors committee, it probably could be accelerated as well. But also in your intro, you indicated that they're now focusing on the next $1 billion. Of course, it doesn't include the Eurobond, but to me, very frankly speaking, the Eurobond I don't think is a very significant component. It's only $1 billion. And the coupon rate, if you just clip it and pay it this year, is around $66 million. So it's not a very significant amount. But anyways, to re-emphasize what the finance ministry said, at the moment, that is not on the table. They're just looking at bilateral, multilaterals, and the billion is in addition to the $2.5 billion that they've already restructured. This is based on the public information that they've already disseminated this week.
Zamadina added that Ethiopia's economy did well despite the coronavirus challenges.
The economy actually has done fairly well. I mean, despite COVID, and as you know, Africa as a whole last year had a negative GDP growth, Ethiopia was one of the very few countries which actually grew, according to the government, last year 6.1%. In the fiscal year that just closed this week, the forecast is 8.5%. So you're absolutely right. It's just to address the short-term liquidity, because the fundamentals, the long-term fundamentals of the Ethiopian economy are still attractive. There are some macro challenges which they're trying to address, like, for example, inflation. But overall, I mean, I'll give you an example. Exports, again, despite COVID, despite the whole world being shut down last year, exports for the first time in several years increased by 19%. It's a record $3.5 billion. Yes, granted, on $107 billion GDP, it could do better. But remember, in context, it's a record export.
wanna see all the mess that we made from the reason. 'Cause baby, there's no videotape to believe in. I wanna see the best of us, the best of us. I wanna see the rest of us, the rest of us. I wanna see the best of us.
And finally, Rwanda sent members of its defense force and officers from its national police to North Mozambique on Saturday. The move is in response to a request for support in the gas-rich nation's battle against the growing Islamist extremist insurgency, which has claimed over 2,000 lives and displaced 700,000 people. Rwanda has promised 1,000 troops to be joined by a $12 million deployment standby force mission from the 16-nation Southern African Development Community. The mission is to begin on July 15 for at least 3 months, and the length of the mission could be extended. The Rwandan and regional interventions come as the insurgent attacks in northern Cabo Delgado province intensify, with rebels targeting villages and islands and beheading some residents. Witnesses have said the fighters are looting and warning residents to leave or be killed. A quick reminder of today's story. The ruling Prosperity Party wins a landslide election victory in Ethiopia. And with that, we come to the end of today's news. Many thanks for watching us.